Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Master of None here. Lost Ark has finally been released officially in the West, and I've been playing the headstart non-stop. It has been refreshing to jump into, for me, a brand new MMO. It's not all rainbows and sunshine though, and I wanted to let you know about my first experiences with the game. So let's get started. The headstart was actually surprisingly smooth. I couldn't download the game for about an hour, but after that, I chose a server which still showed a low population and never had to sit in a queue again. The networking was rock solid without any lags or disconnects. Apparently, it got a lot worse when the servers opened up to the free-to-play crowd 3 days later, but since I was away for that whole weekend anyway, I did not experience any of those issues. However, the first terrible surprise awaited me at character creation. Amazon put a horribly restrictive naming scheme in place that doesn't allow for anything. You can't have a space in between words, nor special characters like underscores or even capital letters in between. This meant that even though I was right there when the game launched, any somewhat decent names that I tried were already taken. This is just going to get worse as time goes on, so I really hope they will be able to update this in the future. The character creation itself was pretty solid and allowed for quite a lot of customization. I have played all the available classes during beta up to level 20, but that didn't help me much deciding on a main. All of them just looked super fun and varied to me. However, since I was interested in the gunslinger, I started with that because it looked the most complicated of the bunch. The gunslinger gets 3 weapon sets to switch in between. Your double pistols for mobility and debuffing, your sniper for big long range damage, and your shotgun that hits enemies up close. Leveling it manually just seemed like a good way to slowly get used to the class. At this point, I would like to mention that I was going in pretty much completely blind, except those first 20 levels from the beta. I didn't look at any guides prior since I wanted to preserve that magic of diving into a completely new world, getting lost and overwhelmed by mechanics and systems. And oh boy, did I get overwhelmed, but more on that later. Jumping back into the world, it was immediately apparent again. By far the best thing about this game for me is the combat. I can't stress enough how amazing and impactful everything feels. I truly believe that this game has spoiled ARPGs for me. The sound design is top-notch and goes beautifully with the character and skill animations. I also love that they have integrated different types of skills. Not everything is just press and forget. Some skills you have to charge up and release at a specific time. Others are aimed or are combos in itself, which gives combat this nice rhythm to it. Combine that with a dodge, interrupt and CC mechanics, and you've got one of, if not the best top-down combat system in any game. Around level 20, my alcoholic mind and FOMO started to kick in. I was eyeing the sorceress as a new potential main and couldn't help myself and started over. My first character in a new MMO is usually a magic-based class, but since the sorceress wasn't available during the beta, it didn't really make it into my initial considerations. Honestly, it just didn't appeal to me visually that much. Don't get me wrong, it's really flashy, but somehow it just didn't look as cool as the other classes. These first impressions got thrown out the window quickly though, because of the crisp sound design once again. Calling down a lightning storm to obliterate a group of enemies puts a smile on my face every time. So I make my way through the main story again. This time, skipping all the side quests. Apparently the main reward you get from those are server bound, so you only have to do them once. It's also generally advised to just do the main quest initially, because you'll be max level much quicker. However, I like the completionist approach and I'm in no rush, so I would only ever leave an area when there were no more quests to complete. The questing in this game feels rather clunky, to be honest. The main reason for this is you basically spend all your time walking and then pressing G on a single item. Just to walk again, spam G to get through the dialogue, rinse and repeat. There is barely any fighting required, which is baffling to me. And if there is any fighting in the open world, You finish the objective by pressing 2 skills and moving on to go and press G again. What saves it for me are the bits where you get to go into a dungeon, since there you'll actually encounter a decent amount of enemies. These dungeons come in normal and hard mode and have all been soloable up until now. Hard mode has never felt particularly hard and has been the one I chose to get me some more of that shiny purple gear. The story itself is serviceable. It starts out kinda boring but picks up during the later levels. Where the game really shines in my opinion are the set pieces. There are some truly epic sights and encounters, which for me carry the whole thing and actually get me excited to continue playing. Smilegate was really creative here and tapped into very different atmospheres, which I appreciate a lot. The icing on the cake are these weird but definitely adorable little stones with smileys on them. While the maps are varied, the open world itself is a weaker part of the game. It's really big, but to me, it felt like it was rather underused. Exploration is hardly ever rewarded, and parts of the map often just feel pointless. A couple collectibles like the Mokoko seeds alleviate the problem slightly, since finding and unlocking those is oddly satisfying. But in general, I found the open world to be lacking. I guess at this point I should also mention the sailing system. In the later part of the story, you earn yourself a boat and a crew to start exploring the oceans. I'm super excited about this concept, but haven't had too much experience with it just yet, since it looked like it's going to be part of the progression system after you hit max level. Like everything in Lost Ark, it has a bunch of systems connected to it, like upgrading your ship, getting a better crew with different set of skills, or even unlocking different types of ships. I don't know with what kind of features Lost Ark originally launched 3 years ago, but going in now, it has definitely been overwhelming trying to understand the many different systems that interact with each other. I'm tempted to call it system overload. From tripods to tripod upgrades, gems, engravings, some weird engraving stone, negative engravings, character and roster bound differences, stronghold upgrades, multiple armor tiers and crafting materials, cards that also give stats and bonuses, NPC relationship, and on and on. I don't necessarily see this as a negative, and I'm sure it will click at some point after interacting with everything a bunch of times. But I wanted to mention that they don't feel very obvious or natural to me, coming from Western MMOs like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2 or RuneScape. It's definitely more convoluted than I'm used to and has left me confused multiple times. If that was the case, I just tried to ignore it for now and continued leveling in the hopes that everything would fall into place later. I'm currently 40 hours in and just dinged level 50. It's too early to tell if Lost Ark will turn into something that I will play long term, but so far, it has been a really enjoyable experience overall. Sure, it's not perfect, but no game ever is. If I would have to give you a short pros and cons list, it would be as follows. Of course, the biggest pro is the combat and the gameplay. Right there with it is the top-notch sound design. I really appreciate the creativity of Smilegate, leading to incredibly varied environments, themes, and atmospheres. Dungeons and epic set pieces. Island and ship system seems fun for now. I'm not sure how I feel about it when I've hit proper endgame. Another big pro are the great variation in classes and playstyles. Convenient systems like mass dismantling right in your inventory and the material storage similar to Guild Wars 2. Unlocking songs to teleport to various different places. I just thought this was a really cool and thematic detail, especially since all the different classes use different instruments to perform the songs. As for the cons, the open world is not very interesting. Same goes for questing. I definitely put the questing experience below average. Transmog system seems a bit limited. And sure, this is personal preference, but until now I don't like most of the outfits in the game. To me they just have this slutty Halloween vibe to it. They look more like costumes and not necessarily clothes that belong into that world. But I guess this is where the cultural differences come into play, since Koreans really seem to love this type of aesthetic. Another negative is that servers don't have assigned languages on them, which makes EU map chat extremely toxic from time to time. Subpar voice acting and some random jankiness, which feels especially out of place because most of the game looks really polished. Things that are not necessarily cons for me, but I can see others not liking. The gear grind. This game has heavy vertical progression with percentage chance of upgrading your gear. On first glance, many convoluted systems and gender-locked classes. I've only really scratched the surface, but this should give you a good overview of my general first impressions of the game, getting to level 50. After I've played the endgame for a while, I'm planning on making another video to give you guys my impressions on that as well. I'm hoping to be able to dive deeper into the loot system, group instances, and general gameplay loop there. So if you've enjoyed this content, make sure to let me know in the comments below and hit that like button. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one.